My name is Maya. I am 29 years old, and my small apartment in Seattle is my sanctuary. 3 weeks ago, I left that sanctuary for a 3 hour drive back to my childhood home. My mother had summoned the family for what she enthusiastically dubbed our pre Christmas celebration, a tradition that, for some reason, always fell squarely on Thanksgiving weekend. It was more practical, she insisted. It was a time when everyone had the day off, when everyone could gather. I nearly pulled a U-turn and fled back to the city twice during that drive. But the familiar, heavy weight of guilt is a surprisingly effective propellant. So, I arrived, forcing a smile that felt like a cheap mask and carrying a homemade apple crisp that I suddenly wished I had just left on my counter. The house was a whirlwind of manufactured cheer. The football game blared from the television, a constant roaring backdrop to a dozen overlapping conversations. It was a chaotic performance, everyone playing their part in some low-budget holiday special. Then, once the dinner plates were scraped clean, my mother stood up, clapping her hands together with the dramatic flair of a game show host. "Presents," she announced. She produced a large sack filled with brightly wrapped gifts and began circling the table, distributing them with a flourish. My dad received a new polo shirt for his golf games. My uncle was handed a bottle of his favorite expensive bourbon. My sisters, Ashley and Madison, got thoughtfully personalized gifts, delicate necklaces, and a gift certificate for a day spa. The room filled with a chorus of performative gratitude, laughter, and hugs. I sat quietly, waiting. Of course, there was something for me. There had to be. The bag was eventually empty, a crumpled sack of festive paper sitting on the floor beside her. My mother still had not glanced my way. A thick, hot knot formed in my stomach. I swallowed, trying to sound nonchalant like the thought had just occurred to me. "Was there one for me, Mom?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She did not miss a beat. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, cold and dismissive. "Maya, be grateful you can sit here with us," she stated, her tone flat, as if explaining a simple fact to a child. It was not a suggestion. It was a reminder of my place. A reminder that my very presence was a gift I should be thankful for. Before the sting of her words could even fully register, my Uncle Gary let out a wet, wheezing snort. He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, kid," he chimed in, projecting to the whole table. "Be glad we still remember your name." The dam broke. Laughter erupted around the table, not light chuckles, but deep, belly-aching laughs. My sisters, my father, my cousins, they were all laughing at me, at the joke my existence had just become. My face flushed with a heat that felt like it could melt my skin, but I held their gazes, nodded slowly, and said, "Good to know." No shouting, no tears, just those 3 words. I made my excuses and left not long after, driving back to Seattle under a black, starless sky. Something had fractured inside me during that drive. Something was about to change. Because a mere 2 weeks later, the very people whose laughter still echoed in my ears were on my doorstep, hammering on the door and screaming for me to let them in. And that, right there, is where this story truly begins. When I stumbled back into my Seattle apartment that night, I tossed my keys onto the counter with a clatter that sounded unnaturally loud in the silence. I took the apple crisp, still in its dish, and dropped the entire thing into the trash can. Then I just slid down the kitchen cabinets and sat on the cold floor, staring at the blank screen of my phone. A part of me, the part that had been conditioned for years, wanted to fire off a furious, multi-paragraph message to the family group chat, detailing every second of my humiliation. But I knew that script by heart. They would call me overly sensitive, insist it was all a big joke, and remind me, yet again, that I should be grateful they even bothered to include me. So I did something else. I sent a text to Elena, my best friend. My phone rang less than 30 seconds later. I recounted the entire evening, my voice trembling as I described the strained smiles, my mother's pronouncement that I should be grateful for a seat at their table, and my uncle's cruel jab about my name. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then, Elena's voice came through, calm and dangerously clear. Maya, that is not just a dysfunctional family thing. That is not a joke. That is targeted, deliberate cruelty. They have zero respect for you. Hearing someone else articulate it so plainly without any of the usual excuses was like a key turning a lock deep in my chest. While she was still talking, I instinctively pulled up my banking app and started to scroll. The Pilates Studio membership, charged monthly. The suite of streaming services in my name that I barely had time to watch because I was always working overtime. The family plan Amazon Prime account. And then the little things. The death by 1,000 cuts. Random concert tickets. Last-minute food delivery orders. Ubers summoned late at night. All those countless times someone said, "Hey, can you just put this on your card? I will get you back." Those moments were, of course, never followed by repayment. It dawned on me with the force of a physical blow. For years, I had been the silent, invisible financial pillar of the very family that so proudly broadcasted their perfect lives online. They could sit around a dinner table and mock me to my face, but they had absolutely no problem with my credit card being on file, a silent sponsor for their comfort and entertainment. "What if you just cut them off?" Elena asked, her voice low. "What if you just stopped? Let them see what it is like when you are actually gone." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. That weekend, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a fresh notebook, and a very strong cup of coffee. I made a list: Mom's pricey Pilates studio, Dad's premium streaming bundle and Prime account, my sister Ashley's habit of buying theme park tickets for her and her friends, concerts, gas money, every single automatic payment that had my name on it but their lifestyle attached to it. Then the purge began. I clicked End Subscription. I navigated to Manage Auto Renew and toggled it off. I hit Delete Payment Method again and again. A cascade of confirmation emails began flooding my inbox, and with each one, a weight I did not even know I was carrying seemed to lift from my shoulders. I did not post some dramatic declaration in the group chat. I did not make a single phone call. I simply let the systems they had grown to rely on quietly fail. A few days passed. I was at my desk trying to get through my lunch when my mom called. There was no hello, no how are you. Just an immediate, accusatory, "Maya, my pass for the Pilates studio was declined this morning. Did the payment not go through?" I took a steadying breath, my heart thumping against my ribs. "Yeah, I canceled it," I said, my voice even. "You will have to put it on your own card from now on." Her voice dripped with offense. "You know I need those classes for my back. You know I rely on that for my health." "I also know what you said to me at Thanksgiving," I replied. "I am finished paying for people who think it is funny to laugh at me." She gasped, a sharp intake of breath as if I had physically struck her. My dad called that evening. "The streaming service is down," he grumbled. "It says the payment information needs to be updated. You must have entered something wrong." "I did not enter anything wrong," I said calmly. "I just stopped paying for it. You are adults. You can manage your own bills." He was silent for a moment, and then his voice hardened. "Family is supposed to take care of each other, Maya." "I agree," I said, a new kind of firmness in my voice. "It is a two-way street." After that, the family group chat erupted. A flurry of passive-aggressive memes about people who forget their roots, and thinly veiled comments about how money is not everything, but some people seem to think it is. I muted the chat. I decided then and there I would not be going home for Christmas, no matter how many guilt-laced messages they sent. For the very first time in my adult life, I was refusing to play the part they had assigned me. I assumed they would pout, gossip about me to their friends, and eventually find another way. I had severely underestimated how deeply they were dependent on me, not just for my money, but for their sense of control. Because as their subscriptions expired and their small comforts vanished, their desperation grew, and that is how my entire family ended up on the other side of my apartment door, pounding and screaming my name. The first major shockwave hit a few days after I had systematically dismantled my financial support system. I was at my desk, at work, trying to concentrate on a marketing brief, my eyes scanning the same sentence repeatedly without absorbing a word. My phone, sitting beside my keyboard, began to vibrate incessantly. It was the family group chat, lighting up like a Christmas tree on fire. My mother had launched the first salvo, a long, rambling paragraph about how some children forget the sacrifices of those who raised them. She was deeply wounded that I would endanger her health by canceling the Pilates membership. She framed it as if I had snatched away vital prescription medication, not just turned off an automatic payment that was hitting my credit card. There was a particularly melodramatic line about how her classes were the only thing keeping her stress levels manageable, as if I was now personally accountable for her physiological and mental well-being. My father quickly followed up with his greatest hits, a tirade about sacrifice, loyalty, and family duty. He could not resist throwing in his favorite line, reserved for any time money was discussed. You would not have that fancy job and apartment in Seattle if it was not for us. It was his go-to accusation, framing my education and career not as achievements, but as an outstanding debt I had yet to repay. Then my sisters, Ashley and Madison, chimed in, the digital peanut gallery. Ashley posted, "Imagine choosing a TV subscription over your own mother," a comment dripping with irony given that I had also canceled the streaming services they used far more than I ever did. Madison added a simpler, more cutting message. "You have changed, Maya. You used to be so nice," punctuated with a crying emoji and a broken heart. It was the same tired, manipulative script they always used, just amplified and broadcast in a group forum. I stared at the screen, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. Then I muted the conversation again and placed my phone face down. The relentless vibrations continued against the wood of my desk, a tactile manifestation of their collective panic. 10 minutes later, a text from Elena popped up. "Are you seeing this?" she wrote, followed by screenshots from Instagram. My younger sister, Ashley, had posted a stark black square with white text. "Some people will sever ties with their own blood over a few dollars. Do not forget who was there for you before the paycheck." A broken heart emoji and a set of praying hands completed the picture. She had not tagged me, but she did not have to. Our entire extended family followed both of our accounts. My mother's comment appeared almost instantly beneath it. So heartbreaking, but so true. "I love you, honey. Some people just lose their way." It was a rallying cry. A few cousins quickly added their support with platitudes like "family over everything" and "money cannot buy class." Someone even wrote, "You guys are the strongest family I know," a comment so absurd it would have been hilarious if it did not burn so much. I felt my stomach clench as I scrolled through the public shaming. They were actively rewriting history in real time, casting themselves as the noble, wounded victims and me as the cold, heartless villain who had forsaken them for a city skyline and a paycheck. Not a single comment mentioned my mother telling me to be grateful for a seat at the table. Not one of them referenced my uncle turning my name into a punchline for the whole family to enjoy. The years of "just put it on your card" were conveniently erased from this new narrative. I locked my phone and pushed it away. I sat there for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the office servers and the distant tapping of keyboards, and I had a realization. My entire life had been governed by a fear of being labeled ungrateful. That fear had made me overgive, overcompensate, and overextend myself to prove I was not that person. And now, the moment I finally said no, they were plastering that exact label on me for the world to see. That evening, instead of spiraling into tears as I might have in the past, I opened my laptop at my kitchen table and returned to my banking app. Fine. If they wanted to talk about sacrifice and duty, we could talk. We could speak in the one language that is immune to guilt trips and emotional manipulation. numbers. I pulled 5 years of transaction history, 5 years, and I started to filter the Pilates studio, the streaming services, the Amazon Prime account, theme park tickets with little notes like "for Ashley and friends," concerts charged to my card at midnight after a frantic text promising, "I will Venmo you, I swear," an emergency car repair for my Uncle Gary that somehow ended up on my statement with a vague promise of, "I will get you back when my bonus comes in," which, of course, never materialized. Restaurant tabs I had picked up because someone would say, "You make more than all of us, it is not a big deal for you," half jokingly, but with a dead serious expectation. It was an agonizing yet strangely empowering archaeological dig. With each highlighted line item, the specific memory resurfaced, the exact conversation, the feeling of resentment I had pushed down, the forced smile I had offered instead of an objection. I painstakingly copied every single item into a spreadsheet, adding dates and brief descriptions. I color-coded the categories: entertainment, memberships, loans, just to maintain my sanity. I watched the grand total at the bottom of the page climb and climb until it was a number so staggering I had to lean back in my chair and just breathe. This was not a few acts of generosity. This was a deeply ingrained systemic pattern of exploitation. To them, my income was not my own. It was a communal fund they felt entitled to because of blood and shared history. I drafted a new email, addressing it to my parents and both of my sisters. The subject line read, "Since we are discussing who owes what." I paused, my finger hovering over the keyboard, then I began to type. The body of the email was calm and direct. I acknowledged the things they had done for me growing up. I was grateful for the roof over my head, for food, for my education. I was not pretending I had raised myself. But, I wrote, the notion that I owed them a lifetime of unquestioning financial support and tolerance for disrespect in return was neither accurate nor healthy. Then, I attached the spreadsheet. I did not call them thieves or parasites. I did not issue an ultimatum or demand repayment. I simply wrote, "If you are going to continue to insist that I am ungrateful and selfish for no longer paying for these things, please review this list. Then ask yourselves who has truly been taking care of whom." My hands trembled as I clicked send. My heart pounded like I had just plunged into ice water, but it also felt like dropping a massive, invisible weight I had been hauling around for my entire adult life. My mother's reply was almost instantaneous. The subject line was in all caps, "How dare you?" The email itself was a solid wall of text. She called my spreadsheet manipulative and a cruel weapon. She said that only a person with no heart would throw money in their parents' faces. She accused me of trying to put a price tag on her love and sacrifice as a mother. Every single item from my list was twisted into a story of her own hardship and my profound ingratitude for making her feel small. She concluded with, "I am so ashamed of the person you have become," and a final crushing line about how she did not even recognize me anymore. Then she blocked me on Facebook. I knew this because Elena sent me another screenshot less than an hour later. My mother had posted a generic, flowery image with a quote like, "A family is a circle of strength, founded on faith, joined by love, kept by God," accompanied by a long, rambling caption about enduring trying times and being thankful for the children who still honor their parents and understand true loyalty. The likes and sympathetic comments poured in. "You are such a wonderful mother. Your family is so lucky to have you. Do not let anyone try to break your beautiful family apart." They were cheering on a woman who had just weaponized the word grateful against her own daughter at the dinner table. None of them knew that every one of her relaxing evenings with Netflix and her essential morning Pilates classes had been bankrolled by the very daughter she had publicly humiliated. I lay in bed that night, staring at my ceiling, a storm of anger and hurt raging inside me, but beneath it all, a strange, sharp clarity was beginning to form. They were never going to wake up and see me differently on their own. They were too invested in their narrative of me, the difficult, ungrateful daughter who had moved to the city and forgotten her place, the one who owed them everything and gave them an endless supply of grievances. The only thing I had any control over was what I gave them access to: my money, my time, my energy, my silence. As Christmas approached and more of their comforts were cut off or demanded a new form of payment, the tone of their communications began to shift. The passive-aggressive social media posts dwindled. The calls became more frequent, more frantic. The guilt trips morphed into undisguised panic. They stopped sniping at me from behind a screen and started scrambling in the real world, trying to plug the financial holes I had left behind. And that was the moment their entitlement finally boiled over into something much louder, much uglier, and impossible to ignore. It was the kind of desperation that does not stay on a phone screen. It is the kind that shows up at your front door. 2 weeks to the day after that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, I was trying to have a normal Saturday afternoon in my apartment. I had some random travel vlog playing on my laptop and was actively trying to push all thoughts of my family out of my head when my apartment's intercom buzzed. I figured it was a package delivery, though I had not ordered anything. A moment later, my phone lit up with my dad's name. I silenced the call, letting it go to voicemail. Immediately after, my mom's number appeared. Then the buzzer blared again, a long, insistent drone, as if someone was leaning their entire body against the button. My stomach plummeted. I cautiously walked to the intercom panel and pressed the talk button just long enough to listen to the audio from the lobby. I heard it instantly, my mother's voice, shrill and amplified by the stairwell's echo. "Maya, we know you are in there. Open the door, buzz us in." There was a strained, artificial cheerfulness in her tone, a performance for any neighbors who might be listening, but the rage underneath was unmistakable. I froze, my mind racing. I crept to my front door and peered through the peephole. A few minutes later, I saw them emerge from the stairwell, my mother and my father, standing right outside my apartment door. They must have sweet-talked another resident into letting them into the building. My mom was clutching a glossy red gift bag, overflowing with tissue paper like she was an actress in a holiday commercial. My dad held a couple of smaller bags by their handles. My phone began to ring again on the kitchen table. I ignored it. My mother knocked, a polite 3-tap rhythm at first. "Maya, honey, it is us. Open up. We brought you something." "We just want to talk before Christmas," she called out, her voice loud enough to carry down the entire hall. I took a deep, shaky breath, moved closer to the door, but kept the deadbolt firmly in place. "I do not want to talk right now," I said, my voice muffled by the thick wood. "You need to leave." The shift in her tone was instantaneous. The faux sweetness shattered. "We drove 3 hours to get here, Maya," she snapped, her knock becoming harder, the gift bags rustling loudly. 3 hours. The very least you can do is open this door and speak to your own parents." My dad's voice, already laced with irritation, joined in. "This is absurd. We are not having a conversation through a door. Open it now." I stood my ground. "No, you do not get to humiliate me, mock me in front of the entire family, and then show up with gift bags as if that erases everything. You need to go." There was a tense silence, and then the knocking escalated to full-blown pounding. My mom's voice rose, cracking with theatrical emotion. "Do you hear how you sound? This is what that city has done to you. You think you are better than us now? You cancel our things without a word. You send that disgusting, hateful email, and now you will not even look us in the face?" She started to sniffle, a loud, deliberate sound. "Our family is falling apart, and you do not even care," she wailed. My dad lowered his voice, but the fury was still there, a low rumble. "This is about respect, Maya. You owe us the respect of a face-to-face conversation. Man up and open this door." The phrase "man up" almost made me laugh. The irony was suffocating. This whole mess started because they had treated me like a child, a target for their amusement. Instead of laughing, I said, Respect is a two-way street. Showing up at my home unannounced and trying to bully your way inside after I have said no is not respect. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my sister, Ashley. "They are at your door. Just open it. Stop making this worse. Mom is having a meltdown." I typed back a swift reply. "They showed up uninvited. This is on them." A second later, her response came. "You are being so cruel. They brought you Christmas presents to make things right." Through the door, my mother must have decided to pivot to that same angle. Her voice rose again. "We brought you gifts, Maya. We did not forget you this time. We are trying to fix this. Is this not what you wanted? Attention?" The way she twisted my pain into a pathetic cry for attention was almost impressive in its cruelty. I imagined what was in those bags. A generic sweater from a department store sale rack? A scented candle? Some meaningless trinket they could later use as proof. We tried, we brought her gifts, but she threw it all back in our faces. "I did not want any of it," I said, my voice firm. "You cannot fix this with presents. You have not even apologized for what you said." For laughing at me. Another beat of silence. Then my mom's voice exploded. "Oh my God, are you seriously still hung up on that? It was a joke, Maya. A joke. Normal people can take a joke." My dad added his support. "You are blowing one little comment completely out of proportion and punishing your entire family for it." That was it. That was the moment I knew, with absolute certainty, that there was nothing for me on the other side of that door. Not yet. Not like this. I pulled out my phone again and sent a text directly to my mother. "You have 10 minutes to leave my hallway or I am calling building security." Out loud, I said, "You need to go now. I'm serious." The pounding paused for a heartbeat, then resumed with even greater force. My mom's voice was now a desperate, cracking plea. "We just need to talk. Open the door, please. Maya, do not do this to us. Do not do this to your own mother." My heart was hammering so loudly I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, but I did not move an inch toward the lock. I just stood there, my eyes fixed on the doorknob, chanting a silent mantra in my head. "You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say no." After what felt like an eternity, probably closer to 20 minutes, of knocking, crying, pleading, and my dad muttering that I was being completely irrational, they finally gave up. The hallway fell silent. A neighbor from down the hall sent me an email a little while later through our building's portal, asking politely if everything was all right and mentioning the very loud disturbance outside my apartment. I sank onto my couch, my entire body shaking with adrenaline. I opened a blank note on my phone and started typing, documenting every word they had said, every demand, every accusation. I needed a record. I refused to let them gaslight me later into believing I had imagined the intensity of their attack. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. This was never just about a forgotten gift or a few canceled subscriptions. This was about control. They were not accustomed to me having boundaries, and they were not handling the word no well at all. I thought the worst was over after they finally drove away that day. I told myself they would go home, lick their wounds, complain about me to anyone who would listen, and then finally back off. I was wrong. That visit was not the finale, it was just the warm-up act. The next time they came back, they would bring more than gift bags and guilt. After the dramatic scene with the gift bags, I foolishly allowed myself to believe they had finally gotten the message. For a few days, an almost eerie peace settled over my life. The family group chat went dormant, save for a few vague, inspirational quotes about the power of forgiveness and the importance of praying for those who have lost their way. I kept the chat muted, dove into my work, had coffee with Elena, and tried to fall asleep without my mother's voice echoing in my head. Be grateful you can sit here. I told myself the storm had passed. It had not. It was just gathering strength. The phone calls resumed. First, from my parents' numbers, which I consistently let ring until they went to voicemail. My mother's messages were a masterclass in emotional manipulation, full of tears about sleepless nights, her skyrocketing blood pressure, and how her doctor had warned her that stress like this can be a killer. She would always end by asking, "Is that what you want, Maya?" My dad's voicemails were colder, more direct. I was fracturing the family. I owed them a conversation because they had raised me. When I stopped answering their numbers altogether, they started using spoofed local numbers. I answered one, thinking it was a work-related call, only to hear my mother's triumphant voice say, "So you do still know how to answer your phone," as if she had caught me in a criminal act. I hung up immediately. Then, Uncle Gary decided to join the fray, leaving rambling messages about how you cannot just cancel your family like a streaming service, and how one day I would be old and alone and would come crawling back. Online, the campaign continued. Ashley posted another melancholy video on social media, this time about the pain of being abandoned by your own sibling, a sibling who chose money and strangers over the people who had known her from day one. She did not use my name, but the caption, "Sometimes blood hurts more than strangers," left no room for doubt. Her comment section filled with strangers offering their support, telling her she was strong and that she should cut off anyone that toxic. The irony was breathtaking. Meanwhile, the real-world consequences of my canceled payments were becoming their new favorite topic. My mom left a frantic voicemail about the Pilates studio demanding a new credit card and a hefty sign-up fee. "Exercise was the only thing keeping me calm," she wailed. "How could you take that from me?" A cousin let it slip that my dad had been complaining to his friends at the golf club about ungrateful children who treat their parents like ATMs. That night, I opened the spreadsheet again. I added a new column: harassment and manipulation. I logged every call, every guilt-laced voicemail, every passive-aggressive social media post, every surprise visit. Seeing it all laid out in neat, organized rows made it impossible to dismiss as a temporary phase. This was a calculated, systematic campaign of intimidation. A few days before Christmas, the conflict escalated from digital back to physical. I was coming home with a bag of groceries when I saw it. My parents' familiar SUV parked across the street. A cold dread washed over me. When I rounded the corner on my floor, they were there. My mom, my dad, and my Uncle Gary, standing in the hallway directly in front of my apartment door, like a human blockade. "There she is," my mother said, her voice sharp and loud. "Do you feel proud of yourself? Calling security on your own parents?" I set my grocery bag down slowly, keeping my apartment keys clutched tightly in my hand. "You're not supposed to be here. You need to leave. Now." My dad stepped forward, his jaw tight. "We are not leaving. We drove all this way to talk to you in person, and you owe us that at least." My mother launched into a tirade about how they were desperately trying to save this family while I was hiding in my little box and treating them like parasites. My uncle leaned against the wall, a smirk playing on his lips, enjoying the show. He gestured down the hall. "You really think your neighbors care about you more than your own blood?" he sneered. "You do not just cancel blood, kid." "I told them blood does not give them the right to show up at my home after I have told them to stop," I said, my voice shaking but firm. My mom scoffed. "No one grabbed you. You twist everything to make us look like monsters so you can feel justified in what you are doing." My dad moved closer, backing me up until the cool wood of my own door was against my spine. "Here's what is going to happen," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You are coming home with us for Christmas. This little stunt of yours is over. Now." My voice trembled, but I got the word out. "No, I have told you to leave. You are harassing me." My mother slammed her palm flat against the door right next to my head. The crack was so loud it made me jump. "Harassing," she shrieked. "We gave you everything. You owe us." My uncle saw me flinch. He smiled, a cruel, satisfied little smile, and then he put his hand on my shoulder, shoving me just enough to push me away from the door lock. It was not a violent push, but the message was crystal clear. At that moment, something inside me went cold and still. I shrugged his hand off me and said, my voice loud and clear, "Do not touch me again." I pulled out my phone, dialed building security, and put it on speaker. "My family is here again," I said, my voice steady. "I have told them to leave. They refuse. One of them just put his hands on me. I need someone up here immediately." They stared at me as if I had just confessed to a murder. The security guard arrived quickly. He listened patiently to both sides, then turned to my family. "She is a resident here. She has asked you to leave. You cannot continue to come here and cause a scene. If you return, we will have to involve the police." He escorted them to the elevator while my mother sobbed and my dad muttered about disrespectful children. As the elevator doors were closing, my uncle shot one last venomous look at me. "You are going to regret this," he hissed. Later that day, building management slid an official notice under my door, documenting the incident and formally stating that my parents and uncle were not permitted back on the property without my express permission. It warned that any repeated attempts to access the building could result in a no trespass order and police involvement. For the first time, I had a piece of paper that validated my reality. This was not just family drama. Other people saw it, and other people were willing to call it what it was: harassment. I wanted to believe that this formal warning would finally be enough to make them stop. But people who are addicted to control do not give it up that easily. And I had a sinking feeling that the next time they came, it would not just be a security guard getting involved. In the weeks that followed Christmas, the silence from my family was deafening. I kept bracing for the next onslaught, another surprise visit, another barrage of guilt-drenched texts, but my phone remained quiet. No Merry Christmas, no Happy New Year, not even a passive-aggressive meme with a caption aimed squarely at me. At first, the quiet felt unsettling, like the eerie calm in the eye of a hurricane. I was still tensed for a storm that was not coming, but slowly, gradually, that silence began to feel like something else entirely. Breathing room. Snippets of information trickled back to me through the family grapevine. My mother's trip to the clinic after the police incident had been a wake-up call. Her doctor had been blunt. If she did not get her stress and blood pressure under control, she was headed for serious health problems. With my financial support gone, the little luxuries that padded her life, the Pilates studio, the frequent lunches out, were no longer sustainable. I heard she had asked a younger colleague to help her install budgeting apps on her phone and teach her how automatic payments actually worked. My dad had been forced to spend hours on the phone with customer service for various streaming and subscription companies, resetting passwords and navigating payment portals himself for the first time, without just yelling for me to do it. He complained endlessly about the medical bill from my mom's visit and the cost of the citation, but this time, there was no one for him to offload the expense onto. Uncle Gary's reputation as the charming, funny guy took a significant hit. Word travels fast in a small town. People had seen the video my neighbor took. They had heard about the police being called, about the citation for harassment. It is hard to maintain the persona of the lovable rogue when everyone knows you are the guy who got the cops called on him by his own niece for cornering her in a hallway. My sister's social media feeds became noticeably quieter. There were fewer selfies from expensive concerts and spontaneous weekend trips, more posts about picking up extra shifts and working toward goals. When I stepped away as their invisible financial safety net, they were forced, finally, to stand on their own 2 feet. That was the real revelation for me. My boundary did not just force me to grow up. It forced all of us to. Once the adrenaline and fear finally subsided, I had a bit of a crash. With no new drama to manage, all the old hurts and resentments floated to the surface. The years of jokes that were never really jokes, The countless times I had paid a bill while swallowing my own bitterness. The decades I had spent believing that my primary role in the family was to be the peacekeeper, the shock absorber. I finally did something I had been putting off for years. I booked an appointment with a therapist. In our first session, she asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. "When did you first learn that your job in the family was to fix things?" I did not have a simple answer, but the question itself was a revelation. It reframed my entire childhood. I also found an online support group, a community filled with people whose stories were eerily, uncomfortably familiar. Parents who weaponized guilt and illness, relatives who used family as a leash, siblings who only ever reached out with a hand open, asking for something. Reading their posts and comments, I saw my own experiences reflected back at me, but labeled with words I had never dared to use for myself. Manipulation, emotional abuse, financial exploitation. It did not change the past, but it fundamentally changed how I saw my decision to finally walk away. Months later, a short email from my mother appeared in my inbox. There was no subject line. The body of the email was just 2 sentences. "I am sorry things got so bad between us. I do not agree with how you handled everything, but I miss my daughter." It was not the sweeping, heartfelt apology I might have once dreamed of, but it was something. A crack in the wall of denial. I did not reply right away. I let it sit for a week. When I finally did respond, I kept it brief and to the point. I told her I was okay and that I hoped she was taking her health seriously. I also told her that if we were ever going to speak again, the terms would have to be different. No more screaming, no more guilt trips, no more pretending that what happened at Thanksgiving was just a joke. I said I was open to the possibility of a conversation down the road, preferably with a neutral third party like a family therapist present. But I would never again go back to being the person who paid for everything just to be grateful to sit there. Hitting send on that email did not feel like I was reopening a door. It felt like I was installing a new one, with a heavy-duty lock, and maybe leaving a small, guarded window cracked open. I honestly do not know what the future holds for my family and me. Maybe, over a long time, we can build something new and healthier from the rubble. Or maybe we will just remain in this state of low-contact limbo forever. But what I do know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, is this. My peace of mind no longer hinges on their moods or their approval. I pay my own bills for my own life. I spend my holidays with people who build me up, who do not see me as a punchline and call it love. And I no longer measure my own value by how useful I can be to the people who happen to raise me. If there is one lesson in this whole mess, it is that family is not a free pass for disrespect. Love without respect is not love. It is just control disguised as concern. Setting a boundary is not an act of betrayal. It is an act of self-respect. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not to slam a door in someone's face. It is to quietly walk away, close your own door behind you, and let them finally feel the weight of their own actions, while you build a life where you are not just grateful to be allowed in the room, you are genuinely happy to be standing on your own. Have you ever been forced to choose between your own mental health and your family's expectations? And if not, what would it take for you to finally draw that line in the sand? End of story.